All right, hey guys, welcome to The Market is Open. Hey Josh, how's it going?
Good. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Okay, so today we're going to look at Virgin Galactic a little bit. The stock was at like an IPO not too long ago. I'm not sure, it was around $10, and it went up to the $40 range. Went all the way up to $40, $42, and now it's back down to $15. So is Virgin Galactic a buy at these levels at $15? We're going to go over an article and see what we think about Virgin Galactic.
Okay, sure. So yeah, the it's called "Does this moonshot stock have a place in your portfolio?"
So I think we'll start with, yeah, what Virgin Galactic does. Because when I first looked at it, I went to their website and I had no idea what they do. Yeah, their website is just doesn't really show anything. And I was sort of comparing it to like SpaceX, for example. And I was like, okay, well, where's their engineering? Like, what are these guys doing? But it's not the type of company that SpaceX is. Virgin Galactic is like a space tourism company, and so it's just they're going to give it's almost like a roller coaster ride in space, pretty much. It's not like their goal is to go to Mars or anything like that. So it's just a tourism company, and I think Richard Branson, who's the founder of the company, has had a pretty good track record in that department, right? He's a good track record with building these types of businesses. And also the billionaire guy Chamath Palihapitiya is on the board of directors of this company.
Yeah. So I wouldn't. It's different than SpaceX, but I guess both businesses have weird markets. Like the SpaceX market of satellites is a very stable, low growth market, and it's unclear what SpaceX would do sort of to boost like what revenue goes from space. And when it comes to consumer, that's an even worse market in the sense like it doesn't really exist right now. And how many people want to go to space and how many times will you want to go to space? And I don't know. So like
Yeah,
both markets
mhm.
seem pretty terrible to me as a business owner. Like I wouldn't want to be in either market, to be honest.
Yeah, well, at least SpaceX has a plan to transport people. Like, I think transportation is better than an amusement park ride, but obviously we've seen that amusement park rides seem to make money.
But
So,
like, but on the downside to that,
uh,
to be fair to
yeah,
Virgin Galactic, is like transport people where, like, at least going into space at this point in time is a more conceivable model than to transport. Like both technologies, the transport people anywhere is a much further off business idea than to just show them space for 5 minutes and then bring them back down.
yeah. So I think this business, yeah, like I think you're right. This the transporting people is not really ready yet, and because you can't put, we haven't put people yet on spaceships. That we go from one side of the earth to the other. But these guys here, their business will probably kick off sooner because they're not actually really going to space. I mean, you could argue everything is space, but they're not really going too far up. They're just flying up in the air, showing people what the Earth looks like or whatever. You experience gravity. You train to go on this flight, and then you come back down. I think it's like an hour and a half flight, and you're going to have all these millionaires and billionaires paying apparently to go on these flights. So I think this company is going to have a lot of pros and cons. We're going to look at why part of the business seems ridiculous, and then we'll look at some of the projections for this company and why it has some value. These guys are talking about moonshots and how it's a great company. So why don't we start with the cons of this company before we get into this and think about why
Okay,
this company
so then
won't do too well.
the number one con for me is just looking at their balance sheet, which is off their article. But if you look at their balance sheet, their whole company is just cash. They have 605 million of assets and 480 million of cash. To me, that screams like almost like a. I don't want to use the word fraud, but it's not a fraud because it's run by Richard Branson. But this is just a cash company at this point in time. 480 million of cash, 605 million of assets. That's kind of a joke, in my opinion. You're running this on 49 million of property, plant, and equipment. Like it's not a company at this point. It's an idea. Like real companies don't have what math 83% of their assets in cash. That's not realistic. It's not like some people go Zoom. Oh, they're trading at 60 times revenue, which is absurd valuation. But that's an absurd valuation. It's at least a real company. It just has an absurd valuation. This is not even a real company when 5-6 of your assets are in cash, and I guess to a negative to what I just said, they did spend 132 million on R&D last year, which is something. They have no revenue, so at least they're gearing up and they're spending their money on R&D. But at this point in time, they're just like a pure cash company. And
Yeah, it's kind of a strange business, and it seems like they're vertically integrated. They say that they're vertically integrated. They have two spaceships, something called a Spaceship Two, which is a suborbital spaceship, and they also have something called a White Knight 2, and which is another type of plane. So, or another type of, they call it a cargo plane. So I think they're vertically integrated, but they're working. What I didn't really understand by looking at their website was that you don't see the core technologies or anything. It's not really a technology company, yet they're somehow vertically integrated, and it seems like they're working on the technology, but that's not really the business at all. It's just they're trying to get something that flies up into the air and comes back down. Does that make sense? Like it's not, I don't see the technology. I don't see what they're working on. I don't see their talent and engineers working on some cool stuff. I just see none of it on their website.
Yeah, you know their website is, again, it's sort of like a boilerplate website. There's nothing on the website. It seems like sort of, a put in place website before you actually design, the real website. It's just like a picture of the plane going up. And I don't really get this idea that they're vertically integrated. There's almost, it's a completely new market. Of course they're vertically integrated. No one does this business, right?
Are they building these spaceships themselves? According to them, they are, but I just don't see who's working on these spaceships. Like something's missing, it just doesn't seem like it's all there.
Yeah, like how are they designing the airplanes, the spaceships?
Compared to other companies like SpaceX, which is, I can see what they're working on. They post pictures and videos, and I see the launches. I haven't seen anything come out of this cash company, right? The other thing is that the customers for this company they all need to be millionaires and billionaires. It's $250,000 for a trip to go into space. It's almost like buying one ticket for an hour and a half to go into space. So I think if they can get off the ground in 2020, which is their plan to start doing these flights, I believe, and then to ramp up from there, then that's great. But I think in the future, I'm still doing the cons basically, but in the future, I think that there might be some competition. Like if SpaceX is actually has some, real value and not just like an amusement park ride, then you'll get to go to space and you'll get to go somewhere else in the same flight, even though that might be, 5 years out.
So if we think about it like this, it's like Boeing has spent how much money just getting one airplane approved, and they only have 50 million of property, plant, and equipment to get a completely new airplane approved. And right, how are they going to?
Yeah, these guys just put a bunch of money into a company, and they suddenly have an airplane that they're working on, or a spaceship that they're working on, and they have a business suddenly. Like I just didn't see where it came from. It kind of came out of nowhere.
Not that I agree with a lot of regulation, but if Boeing costs, if there's only two airplane manufacturers in the world, it's probably because there's a ton of regulation to get an airline approved or a new airplane approved, which is one of the reasons why the 737 MAX was called the MAX and 737, even though it was a completely different airplane, in order to bypass a lot of the regulation that a new plane would have. So I don't understand how they're going to be able to launch a new plane and just bypass all the regulation and also not have all the crazy capital spend that a company like Boeing had,
yeah,
right? Like if this is a consumer facing plane, they're taking people to space. To me, they're the same as the 737 MAX at this point in time. They should have all they should have all the same regulation that a 737 MAX would have, you would think.
Yeah, also it seems like they only need a couple planes to run their business if they're charging that price per person and each flight carries 5 people. Okay. But what happens if something goes wrong? Then the whole business is done basically, right? Like no one's going to want to go if your only plane blows up or something.
For sure. Yeah, so that's a big risk, and we've seen that sort of happen to companies where, they have one thing going for them and then it collapses.
Yeah, well that's what happened with Boeing kind of. So okay, so those are the cons. Are there any more cons we can think of?
Yeah, I mean, the last con is just how many times will you want to go to space? I just don't see it. It's like, okay, even if everyone goes once, it's like how many new people are born. It's not like Disney World where people will go multiple times. I can't really see anyone going more than once. But to be fair, maybe there's so many people that want to go once that could take so many years to go through. So that's
so it's 250. If they can maintain that price for many years, then $250,000 a person, especially if they don't have any competition, right? Then I believe in January they said that they had 8,000 people signed up, like pre-orders, I guess, or tickets sold. So that's $2 billion. So I think that's one of the pros of this company is that somehow they have a pipeline of at least $2 billion, because that was back in January. So they have at least $2 billion of people getting ready to go for these flights, and that's only 8,000 people. So you don't need that many people to turn this into a business, because the entire company is valued at $3 billion right now. If they can get a couple thousand people a year, maybe 10,000 people, then they can technically turn this into a business. And here is their projections for the next couple of years. In terms of revenue, I guess they're going to be ramping up in 2020 with $31 million in revenue. And then by 2023, they expect to have $590 million of revenue and have earnings before taxes and depreciation of $274 million.
So yeah, I mean, those are pretty rosy projections. I mean, to me, that's not very believable projections at all. Like even at this moonshot EBITDA of is this the company's 274? It would still be trading at 10 times 2023 EBITDA.
And it's EBITDA. It's not even earnings.
Exactly. Yeah. No, it's probably one of the most absurd valuations I've seen, and I don't even know if we could call it a tech company. Like, it's not really. There's a lot of companies that pretend to be tech companies. These tech companies these days that aren't tech companies.
Like, yeah, so that's the thing. That's what I find weird, is that everybody's like, is this the next Tesla? Is this the next SpaceX? But I don't see any technology coming out of this company. It seems like a purely entertainment company, equivalent to like Disney World or something, like one ride, one ticket. But obviously, I mean, Disney World makes money, but this company is like one roller coaster ride. That's what their business is.
Yeah, exactly. So no one would call Disney a technology company. So when they make a ride, and it's hard to say if this is. So yeah, I would say definitely buyer beware on this investment.
Yeah, like I also wonder if these guys can expand into other types of businesses or whatever. But it seems like right now they're going to have enough challenges trying to get their current business model ramped up. But also, like, yeah, are there other competitors? Can someone else just take $500 million and stick it somewhere and into a company and be like, hey, we're going to compete with you? Or is the brand name, I think one of the pros, I guess, of the company is that people trust Richard Branson, and just the brand name of what he does is something that people want to invest in and be part of, and something that could send the stock higher because they simply believe in the company. And then you have Chamath Palihapitiya, who comes on TV and does, he talks good things about this company, saying it's a great company. So those things alone could help push the stock up, regardless of whether the idea is there. Because I find investors do like to buy ideas, right? They like to speculate on things, and it could have huge potential. We don't know, and the fact that we don't know means it's uncertain really what the future price will be, and therefore the valuation could go up a lot. It could go down a lot. You might get some volatility. And that's probably one reason why I went to $40, because it's a very exciting company. Like it's positioned to be very exciting. And I think people are bidding it up with that excitement in mind. The stock's come back down it went all the way back down to around 10 again. And now it's back to $15.
Yeah, no, definitely people like assets, like you said, that don't make money and are just ideas. And people like to think of the possibilities of this might be, a big market in the future. So people definitely like that sort of opening.
Yeah, like it seems like a trading vehicle. There's like my pun of the day. But like it doesn't seem like there's much substance underneath to the company, I guess. But people are going to speculate on it, because it's already worth, like you said, $3 billion. Even in 5 years from now, that it shouldn't, it's trading at a high valuation. But people are going to trade it up on some future anticipations.
Yeah. Okay. So last thing to finish. So I'm reading right here. For the past decade, private spaceflight companies have enjoyed very few limitations surrounding the testing and operation of their technologies. So it just it just seems weird to me that you have little regulation for spaceflight, but a lot of regulation for commercial travel, when to me they're the same business. When spaceflight, to me, if you're going to take people into space, that's an even more dangerous business than the Boeing 737 MAX. So if we're going to, make Boeing talk about this for a year, it's like, how does this like avoid regulation because you're going further into space? That kind of makes no sense to me.
Yeah, and there's still regular customers aboard the aircraft. So
and you're going higher.
you're going higher. It's a
Like,
totally different type of
but you should be more
engine.
regulated. Like, why would you be? If I travel, across the U.S. to China, I should be more regulated than if I travel just across the U.S.
Yeah, and I
Right?
think anything with people on it should be more regulated.
Yeah. So you're driving with people all the way up to space, and you're saying we're going to be less regulated.
So that's a good point. I think as this becomes more mainstream, as you see other companies start to do it, then maybe it will become more regulated, and that might be a risk for this company.
Exactly. Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But I think there's so many risks. I would definitely not buy this. The market, it's terrible. $3 billion for an investment that maybe I was calculating 7 billion people in the world. Maybe at best like 1% of people, maybe not even that, 0.5% of people could afford that. So 35 million people, and you said all of them are going to pay 250,000.
Yeah.
I guess that's a big number, but it's just how many years will that be spread over?
Hmm. And then yeah, and then at a certain point, you'll have competitors come into the.
I guess what I'm saying is like I guess 70 million people could conceivably afford that, but how many of them actually want to go into space is probably a much smaller number.
All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks so much for watching, and please hit the subscribe button.